Welcome to my first of what will be many, many more to come 2014 NFL mock drafts. I know this is incredibly early, but why not go ahead and do one kind of as a basis, as a starting point. Kind of let you know maybe where the draft stock of certain players are, maybe where some particular teams are going to be drafting, what some of the trends are going to be coming up next May in the 2014 NFL draft. And yeah, by the way, having to wait until May for the draft is bullshit. Bullshit. But I can assure you there's going to be a lot more draft talk in the next 6 to 7 months to come out of me for sure. One thing that does stand out to me already from the very jump when referring to this 2014 NFL draft class is that it's much stronger, particularly in the first round compared to last year. Definitely much more on par with 2012 and maybe overall, maybe even a little bit better. But a much, much stronger first round, not only in terms of just the quality of good players, but also the star potential players at different positions, both on the offensive and defensive side of the football. So this has the makings of being a very good, interesting, compelling draft coming up next May, full of players that could have long-time contributions to the NFL teams that draft them. First thing that stands out to me, obviously, for this year's draft compared to last year's draft is a much stronger quarterback class. And as a general rule, here's how it works with the NFL draft. When you have a strong quarterback class, your draft class as a whole tends to be a lot better. See 1983, see 2004, just as a couple of examples. 2014, you're looking at it, you could see anywhere from 4 to 6, depending on who declares, 4 to 6 quarterbacks end up legitimately being first-round NFL draft picks. Just that right there in itself helps make and provide for a stronger overall draft. And you've got some big-time star potential out of these quarterbacks. Now, over the next several months, we're going to still be watching these quarterbacks play their 2013 college seasons, and I'll be able to watch them more closely, go back and study them before I really say who I think is the best of the best. But, right now you got Bridgewater, you've got Hundley, you've got Mariota, a redshirt sophomore. Hundley's a redshirt sophomore. You got Boyd, you've got Mettenberg, you've got Manziel, another redshirt sophomore. So you've got some definite talent there. And it also begs an interesting question with so many quarterbacks potentially being able to go in the first round. Should guys like Manziel and Mariota and Hundley actually declare? Should they declare? Will they declare? It's one of those things, like in the case of Manziel, he kind of presents himself as a bit of a douche, let's face it. But he's also a talented kid. The more he stays at Texas A&M, the more potential holes he might get poked in his game by NFL scouts that might hurt his draft stock, not help his draft stock. So it might very well be wise for him to declare after this 2013 college season. As far as Hundley, as far as Mariota, it might be, again, one of those things similar to Manziel where the longer they stay in college football, the more holes might get poked in their game. And they might be able to catch certain teams and certain scouts on a certain upswing and get caught up in the BS and the hype and overlook certain deficiencies, getting caught up in, all the things that Brett Hundley or a Marcus Mariota could bring to the table. As a result, it may very well be wise for all three of these guys to declare. Will all three of them declare? I would expect Manziel for sure to declare. Mariota, Hundley, not so sure yet. Check back with me in a couple of months. An interesting subplot for this next year's draft that's developing throughout this college football season is Jadeveon Clowney and his draft stock. Before the season, he was pretty much a presumptive either 1A or 1B pick. It was either going to be him or Teddy Bridgewater, and a lot of people were arguing that Clowney should be the number 1 overall pick regardless of what a team needed because they felt he was the best player on the board. Now it's amazing, got about a month and a half, 2 months into the college football season, and people are starting to question Jadeveon Clowney's conditioning, his work ethic, his desire, his heart, his willingness to play through injuries. And certain thinking heads or talking heads, whatever you want to call them, draft nicks, and I'm sure some NFL scouts too, are questioning what's going to happen once Jadeveon Clowney does make the pros and he does get a big payday. Is he going to take it easy? Is he going to be that type of guy that really can be an impact dominant star player that can put a team defensively on his back and be a team leader and be an all-pro, be a potential Hall of Famer, which is the type of talent that he does have? I make no mistake about it. These are questions that other players have had in the past. I think of Julius Peppers. He had some questions about his work ethic and desire in that 2002 draft, and he became a very good NFL player. So, if you looked at Jadeveon Clowney and you were saying, okay, he's going to be like Julius Peppers, most NFL teams would probably spend, a top 3, top 5 pick on Jadeveon Clowney. With the emergence of the quarterbacks so far in this draft class coming up, I don't really foresee any way that at this moment anyways, that Jadeveon Clowney is going to be a number 1 overall pick. I might even find it hard to believe that he'll be a number 2, 3, or 4 pick. I would say, maybe somewhere between picks 5 to 8. Maybe his talent merits being drafted somewhere between 2 and 7. But I think somewhere at this moment anyways, and that's the key thing, at this moment, if the draft were held right now, I firmly believe that Jadeveon Clowney would be drafted probably somewhere between 5 and 8. Now, is this one of these things that a few teams are going to get caught up in the media hype and get caught up in the bullshit, and as a result, they're going to pass on a better player in Clowney? That could be. Or as the draft process goes along, there could be more questions arising about Clowney, and as a result, certain teams are going to pass on him, and they're going to feel good about him because they don't want to have those problems that they feel may come associated with him. It's not just about the quarterback class and Jadeveon Clowney for the 2014 NFL Draft. I think there are other positions that are also very strong in this year's draft class. You look at offensive tackles with guys like Jake Matthews and Taylor Lewan, and Cyrus Kouandijo. I probably butchered his name, I apologize. And other guys too, like Cameron Irving and Antonio Richardson. There is some definite talent, some first-round talent that is at offensive tackle, which in today's NFL, more and more teams have placed an emphasis, a high priority on the left tackle position because they feel it's a much more important position than it used to be able to protect the quarterback's blind side, in particular with the increased use and proliferation of passing games in the NFL all throughout the league. You got to be able to, if you got a big-time franchise quarterback, you got to be able to keep him upright. You got to be able to keep him healthy. And a lot of teams feel that a left tackle is a safer pick in the first round, and this year's class could produce 5, maybe 6 guys that could go in round 1. Outside linebacker, I think, is a very strong class this year. You could throw Jadeveon Clowney in the mix. I think some teams may profile Clowney as a better fit as a bigger 3-4 outside linebacker than they would necessarily as a 4-3 defensive end. Some teams might, and that could potentially be his better position because of his overall athleticism. It allows him to play freer and allows you to move him around more, fits more with his versatility and his athleticism. But you have other guys too, like Anthony Barr. You have guys like C.J. Mosley. You have the Khalil Mack kid from Buffalo, who I'm telling you right now, he's probably slated somewhere to go between picks 15 to 25. Do not be surprised if a lot of teams start to really fall in love with this kid, especially early on in the year after his monster game against Ohio State, and he becomes a top 10 pick. Do not be surprised about that at all. Other guys like Kyle Van Noy and Ryan Shazier out of Ohio State, this is a pretty strong outside linebacker class, both for teams looking for 4-3 outside linebackers and teams looking for those impact 3-4 outside linebacking edge rushers. You could even throw maybe Trent Murphy of Stanford as another guy into that mix. So a very, very good outside linebacker class, regardless of whether you're looking at it from a 4-3 or a 3-4 standpoint. And then wide receiver. This isn't a class necessarily that I think it has 9 or 10 guys that go in the first 2 rounds that are pretty much all complete studs. Actually, I think overall, this wide receiver class is a little bit top-heavy, at least right now. But I do think, especially with the first 3 guys, that you have some big-time potential playmakers. And Sammy Watkins out of Clemson, out of Mike Evans at Texas A&M, and then Marquis Lee out of USC. Marquis Lee, I think, could be the most interesting one in the sense that with a little bit of injury concerns and the fact that USC is not playing that well this year, his draft stock, I think, will take a little bit of a hit, maybe unnecessarily. And as a result, somebody picking between maybe 15 and 25 is going to get a real gem and a real stud of a player, a real difference maker, a real down-the-field vertical threat that also provides you something underneath, a lot of versatility in the passing game. Marquis Lee is going to be a big-time value for at least one NFL team, that's for sure. But guys like Mike Evans would seem to fit for a team that needs a big-time physical wide receiver, somebody along the lines of a Brandon Marshall type or an A.J. Green or a Calvin Johnson. And a guy like Sammy Watkins, similarly, somebody like an Andre Johnson or his old Clemson teammate DeAndre Hopkins. Think about DeAndre Hopkins. He's nice, but Watkins has always been viewed as the better talent. He really has been. So, again, wide receiver class looking pretty good for 2014. Areas of concern or question marks at this point. I don't think the running back class is all that great. Maybe C-Strunk and Gordon stand out to me the most, but nothing spectacular at this point. The defensive line class, even with guys like Nix and Tuitt from Notre Dame and Clowney, this is not a strong defensive line class like maybe last year's was, especially the defensive tackle position. And then defensive backs. You're going to, by default, have guys go in the first round, like the safety from Alabama, guys like Roby, Verrett, etc., etc. There will be guys that go in the first round, but that doesn't necessarily make it a good class or a strong class or a deep class. I think you're clearly lacking in a top 10 talent out of the secondary. And frankly, I don't know if any of these secondary players at this point, other than the safety from Alabama, are even worth a top 20 pick. And that's a kid at Alabama. And you're talking about Dix there, where he got suspended for taking money from an agent, which to me instantly means he's going to be a great professional because he already has a professional attitude and mindset. But those are some of the other areas. You're going to hear a lot about the quarterbacks. You're going to hear a lot about Jadeveon Clowney. But there are other positions of strength that will make this a strong 2014 NFL draft class. And there are some other positions right now that appear to be relatively weak. But if players step up, if players get better at these positions, and they get more talent from these positions, I guess is the best way to put it, this could be a very, very strong 2014 NFL draft class. Again, as I said, this is a first of many, many mock drafts. All 32 picks are in the description box down below. If you've got any complaints or any nitpicks about it, it's fucking the middle of October, so get over it. I'm telling you right now that I anticipate a lot of these things that I put down changing. Some of this were where I was anticipating players being taken by a certain team. There's certain players draft stock, just certain players or certain teams, and where I think they'll be drafting. In terms of the mock draft, I went off of the strength of schedule after week 5. So that's why you see the Giants having the first pick and the Jaguars only having the second pick, where most every other mock draft you're probably going to see has the Jaguars picking number 1 right now, which is not true based off of strength of schedule. The Giants would have the first overall pick even after week 6, I believe. So let me know. The draft is 7 months away. Damn it, that's a long time. 7 months.